Mr. Wei. It is said that Mr. Wei is a son of an official family in Zhanyang, and he's dissolute and lustful. All the pretty slaves and servants in the house were raped by him. He once carried thousands of gold and vowed to find famous prostitutes all over the world. He would visit any bustling place with prostitutes. For the less outstanding prostitutes, he would leave after sleeping for 2 nights. While for the famous ones he particularly liked, he would often stay for several months. Mr. Wei's uncle, Mr. Wei, was also a famous eunuch. When he was old, he resigned and returned home. He hated Mr. Wei's virtues and hired a famous private school teacher, forcing him to study behind closed doors with his brothers. Mr. Wei's nature is hard to change. At night, after the tutor is asleep, he jumps over the wall to escape, goes to see a prostitute, and returns at dawn. This is a normal thing. One night, he broke his arm while jumping over the wall. The school teacher found out about it and told Duke Wei. Wei Gong was furious and beat Mr. Wei until he couldn't get up before he was treated with medicine. After the injury healed, he made a covenant with him, if he could read twice as many books as other brothers, and write well, he would not be prohibited from wandering out. Otherwise, if he went out privately again, he would be beaten as hard as before. But Mr. Wei was the smartest, and his studies often exceeded the progress set by his tutor. After only a few years, he passed the exam and wanted to break the precepts. But Wei Gong restrained him even more tightly. When the young master went to the capital, Wei Gong gave the accompanying old servant a diary, and asked him to write down the young master's words and deeds every day. Therefore, for several years, Mr. Wei did not dare to do anything extraordinary. Later, he passed the Jinshi examination, and Wei Gong's restraint on him was slightly relaxed. From then on, every time Mr. Wei went to visit a prostitute, he was afraid that his uncle would know about it. So when he entered a remote alley where a prostitute lived, he would pretend to be named Wei. One day, Mr. Wei was passing by Xi'an and saw an actor named Luo Huiqing, who was 16 or 17 years old. She was very beautiful, like a beautiful woman. Mr. Wei liked him very much. He kept him around at night and gave him many belongings as gifts. I heard that Luo Huiqing's newly married daughter-in-law was very charming, so she secretly hinted that he had brought her here. Luo Huiqing looked calm and agreed happily. As expected, he brought his wife over that night and the 3 of them slept in the same bed. Mr. Wei was very attached to Luo Huiqing and stayed for several days. He discussed taking him home and asked about his family background. Luo replied, "My mother has passed away a long time ago, but my father is still here. My original surname is Luo. My mother was a slave of the Wei family in Zhanyang when she was young. She was later sold to the Luo family and gave birth to me 4 months later. If I can go back with the young master, I can investigate the situation of the Wei family." Mr. Wei was shocked and asked his mother's surname. He replied Lu. Mr. Wei was so horrified that he broke into a cold sweat. It turned out that his mother was a maid of the Luo family after being fornicated by Mr. Wei. Mr. Wei was speechless and waited until dawn. He gave him many belongings and persuaded him to change his career. He pretended that he was going to another place. When he came back, he asked him to go with him and walked away. Later, Mr. Wei became the county magistrate of Suzhou. There was a courtesan named Shen Weiniang, who was very beautiful because of her slender spine. Magistrate Wei liked her very much and kept her as his bedmate. He teased her and said, "Is your nickname taken from Du Weiniang in the spring breeze?" Shen Wei, my mother, replied, "No, when my mother was 17, she was a famous prostitute in Suzhou. There was a young man from Zhanyang with the same surname as you. He stayed with my mother for 3 months, and the 2 made a marriage vow. My mother gave birth to me 8 months after the young master left. Hence the name Wei, which is actually my last name. When the young master was leaving, he gave him a golden mandarin duck, which is still there today. Unexpectedly, there was no news after the young master passed away, and my mother died of anger and melancholy. When I was 3 years old, I was raised by an old lady named Shen, so I changed my surname to hers." Upon hearing this, County Magistrate Wei was angry, ashamed. After being silent for a while, he suddenly hatched a vicious plan. Suddenly he jumped out of bed. He got up, lit a lamp, and invited Wei Niang to drink together, but secretly poisoned the cup. Wei Niang just swallowed the wine, fell to the ground and groaned. When everyone hurriedly looked at it, she was dead. County Magistrate Wei called for the actor. The musicians handed Wei Niang's body over to them and heavily rewarded them with property. However, Wei Niang's friends in her life were all rich and powerful people. When they heard that Wei Niang died violently, they all complained and bribed the actors. They prompted them to report to Magistrate Wei's superiors. Magistrate Wei was so panicked that he had to spend all his money to pay bribes. In the end, he was dismissed for being impetuous. When he returned to his hometown, he was only 38 years old. From then on, Mr. Wei closed his door to think about his mistakes and regretted his previous scandals. But the wives and concubines have no children, and they want to adopt their uncle's grandson as their heir. Because his family was full of bad conduct, Duke Wei was afraid that his descendants would also be infected with bad habits. Although he agreed to adopt him, he had to wait until he was old. When Master Wei heard about it, he was furious and wanted to take Luo Huiking in as his son, but his family members said no, so he gave up. A few years later, Master Wei suddenly fell seriously ill. He often beat his heart and said, "Whoever is a prostitute is not a prostitute." Man, when his uncle heard about it, he sighed and said, "He's probably going to die." He sent his second son's son to his house and asked his grandson to say hello morning and evening. More than a month later, Mr. Wei died.
Alright, this story has come to an end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.